Hey everyone, this is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Today's video is the part 1, and it's Let's Quilt Beginners with one block. A beautiful pattern for hand stitching or machine. Let your colors show. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the fabric, the template, sewing the blocks, and several samples that might give you some ideas about how you want to do yours also. I had been doing a lot of hand stitching of other things, and I've sort of fallen back into my magazines again. And so the pattern we're going to look at today is from the Love of Quilting, September, October 2021. This is a current one, and it's page 40. And I want you to look at this part is that she used all polka dot material, and you're going to see why that was a good idea, but there's a lot of other ways that you can do this also. So I want to show you my sample. Like I said, I told you guys all over and over that I like to make a sample. This is not showing up so good on here right now. It's a 14-inch block, and to do a quilt that had 5 yards of backing, she did 30 squares. And you say, well, that's a lot. But let me tell you, it's a sweet pattern and it moves fast. So let's get started. First of all, there's only going to be one piece to cut. And it's going to be 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. And you're going to say, well, why didn't she just use that with a ruler? Well, I had my ruler, but for some reason, I kept missing the spot. I even put a piece of blue tape on it, and I said, oh, I'm just going to shorten this, and I'm going to make myself a template. This was an old piece of calendar backing, and I cut it, and it's thick enough I can actually run the rotary cutter by it if I'm real careful. So that's important. And the 2 things that you're going to need are going to be a set for one block. You're going to need 8 of your squares. You're going to have to pick your colors, and I'll show you the colors that I used in one of mine in a minute. And then you're going to need a cream colored or a white colored fabric. And the nice thing about cutting the cream or the white is that you can put it in 4-inch strips or 5 3/4 inch strips, whichever way you want to do it. And then you're ready to start and cut those. But you're also going to need 8 of those for your block. So when I got ready to do this, I had to square up the end. I was looking at the white ones, the cream ones we're going to color. And it really works well. If you find a dark line, you line it up with the top all the way across, then slide it over till you see where your raw edge is. And I just got a new rotary cutter, and I really like it because I don't have to keep opening and shutting it. That's really an advantage, and it seems to cut really well. And I'll put my hand over away from the cutter, but hold my ruler, and I'm going to run it down. And there, I didn't do a very good job, so I get to come back and I get to do it again. And there, I've got it. Then I just stopped using the ruler, but you could still use it. And I laid my template on here, and I actually have 4 pieces of fabric. And then I'm going to take and cut it again. That's half of one block. That's 4 pieces. And then here's my next one. And lay it. And this goes really nice. You don't have to wait a long time to be able to make a square block this time. And then I cut it real carefully, and you stay away from that, and it'll go along the edge of it. So there's just one block that I had. Once I get 8 of those for a block, or I cut a whole bunch of them, then there's one more thing that you'll need to do. You're going to take and fold down the top right hand corner. Yeah, get there so you can see it. And what you do, is you take one of those rectangles that you cut, but you're only going to do this for the cream or the light color. You're going to take the top right corner and very carefully, now this part you want to do real neatly and get it to match up. And then you're going to take, and I pressed them. I just a real light press, and I went ahead and set up 8 of them so I'd be all ready when I got ready to sew. So that's one section. That's your cream. Cutting that. Then you're going to sort of fussy cut the next part. And it's going to have 8 colors or 8 prints that you want to do together. And so I just started and I said, well, it's easy to put 2 things together. So I put the oranges and a yellow and a brown and another one just to see how I'd like it and to see if it would go together well. So then that's done. That's ready. And what we're going to do is we're going to move to the sewing machine, and we're going to take, there's one block. Okay, I'm going to go back over to my cream. I'm going to lay my cream on here so that it lines up really well. And I'm going to go from that corner down to that corner. And then I want to show you a little something that somebody was talking about on a different quilt, the one I was doing for my grandsons, because instead of wasting a part we're going to cut off, you can actually make another set of squares as you're going and cut them off and press them. And I've got a nice stack of those already, and from both the boys' quilts and from this one. Okay, if you look at this, you'll see that I've drawn a line so that you can see it, and I just used an air erase marker. Could have used a pencil, like a mechanical pencil, and I'm going to stitch from that top to the bottom. Now, if you were hand stitching, you would turn this, start over here, and then go straight across to the end, and then stop and knot off. But for what we want today, and I actually started it that way. Okay, and you can see I've done a stitch there. Now, this whole piece on the right is going to be cut off. And that's the part that kind of bothered me, was cutting that off and just throwing it away. So here's what I had seen. When you had a piece that hangs out like that you know is going to be gone, you just take and think of another line. So I'm going to come in here and draw one. I've got to draw something that is going to be wide enough for me to cut down through the center and have 2 nice seams, or have enough to catch the material. So that's what I've done, and that's pretty wide, but just for what we're going to do, I'm going to go in between those 2 lines because I made them so wide. And I'm going to quickly do another. Well, I really want to go down the purple one. Trust me, I changed my mind. Let's see if I'm going to mess up. I think I will. So I'm just going to go back and go down the purple line that I made the second one, because I made it too small. All right. Then what I want to do is take my scissors, and I'm going to cut between those 2 lines that I made with my super duper little scissors here. All right. And the piece that you're looking for your block is this piece, and you open it up and fold it back, and that's what you're going to make. They actually, to make that large quilt, you make 240 of the printed or colored blocks and 240 of the cream ones. And that's the whole thing. So if you know how to machine chain, then you can just do a whole lot of those. And then what I did was cut those apart. I didn't do that many, but cut them apart. And then I went and did the other part, other row of stitching that I did. And when you look at this, when I open it up, there I've already got a 2-tone square for putting in blocks. And you'll have one of those for every one of those sets that you put together. And because I was having so much fun doing these blocks, I tried several different combinations. And look at all the extras that I made that I didn't throw away of that fabric on all of those. And you say, well, maybe they're not all the same or exactly the same. Well, then you just cut them down to the size that you want. For example, let's take this one. And it fits into, well, it's actually a 3.5 by 3.5. And that's the way all of them should be. And you wouldn't even have to do any cutting down on those unless you found one or two, but they should fit perfectly together. You could make one crazy quilt with those. So let's move those out of the way and show you a couple of the ones that I worked on. And let's look at, this is not the first one. This is the second one that I was playing with my different colors. And want you to see if you can see where the block is now. For example, here's the one we just sewed on the sewing machine. And that would be the bottom of this one. And then I'd have the other one, and I would turn it this way. And so I would sew these two together, and then I'd sew these two together, and on around. I've had 4 of them. And then I pressed them open sometimes. And then sometimes I just went on and laid the 2 pieces together and made one seam down the middle after I had this sewn to that and this one sewn to this one. Then I was ready, and this one, it would run the stitch down through there. And I just had fun with this because I like putting 2 things that sort of go together and then mixing them up. So let me show you another one. I said, what happens if I do a solid pattern? Because sometimes I really like that. And I had this nice brown. And I said, oh, wow, I'm trying to decide to cut up a big piece of material to try and do that, to do this one. And if you were going to do it with just 2 colors, it'd take 5 yards of the background color and 5 yards of your colored fabric just to do the front. But then you'd have it in your pieces. And here again, look, here is the piece. Here's the piece turned, sewn together, and then they're sewn together, and then it's turned, and the block is turned, and then the block is turned. It's very similar to the quilt we just finished, except this is so simple with the one piece that you cut out. And then I said, well, what about this crazy color that I have? I have been looking for something to do with this. If I had a wild person that I wanted to give them a quilt that was really different, or a lap quilt, that would be it. And every once in a while, here's the last one, I pull out the black box, and it's got all the colors in it. And you can see, it also lets you know what will work. And everything was going good, and I like this pink with the black, but it does not work on here. So that one would have to come out. And that could be a pillow, could be a runner, could be a small lap quilt too, that you're making with that. So just a review, it's a 4 by 5 3/4 template, or cut it with your ruler. You need, for one block, you need 8 of the cream or white, and then 8 of your pattern blocks that you want to put together with it. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I really hope you'll give this a go. If you're a beginning quilter, this would really be great. And for an experienced quilter, you're going to have some nice spaces to quilt, hand quilt or machine quilt. Thank you for watching. Any notes that I have will be written in the description. If you found this helpful or fun, or you think you might give it a shot, please subscribe and hit like. And I always welcome comments. Thank you.